Transparency in AutoCAD can be done in a couple of different ways. So the first way that we're going to go over is at the level of the actual layers. So if we open up our layers panel, so if you don't have something open that has your layers panel, we can go ahead and just type layers, and you'll have, whoops, that layer states. So if we open layer, no S on the end, that will open up our layer properties manager. So you can see if we scroll over each of these separate layers will have a transparency setting here. So 0 is going to be your default. This is going to be a fully opaque line. And then if we click on this and we change our transparency, so 50 is going to make those lines. So you can see the lines that were on that layer got to be 50% opacity. The important thing to keep in mind here is that a 20% is actually the opposite of what it would be in a program like Illustrator. This means that it's 20% less than full capacity. So your 0 is going to basically be your 100% color. So this is going to be totally solid. And then if you go into your transparency here and we type something like 80, this is going to get super, super light. So that's something important to keep in mind. It's something that I often still mess up just in the difference between the two programs. And most programs are going to do it the opposite way of this. So it's a little bit frustrating here. So you can do it at the level of the actual layer. Another thing that we can do is we can do it by individual object. So if we highlight this object and then we type properties, we'll actually have a bar that pops up that's going to look like this, and we're going to have a option in here for transparency. So you see here it's by layer. So what that's going to mean, anytime we have an object that's done anything by layer, it means that this panel is going to take control over that object. Now, if we want to set an individual object to be a certain transparency, we can do that at this level. So we can set that at 50. And then you can see that that's only going to affect this single object that we actually apply that to. So although these two are on the same layer, you're going to see transparency varies. And then this object will not be affected by anything that I do to that layer. So if I go to my yellow layer here, so that's layer 2, and I change the transparency of this, let's say I go to 20, it's not going to affect this object at all. So if I keep changing this and I go to 90 here, you'll see that that one's going to get super light, but this one will not be affected. Now, all of the other properties of this that still say by layer will be affected by the same panel, so don't be confused there. And then if we actually select both of these, we can change both of the opacities for them. And then if we wanted both of these to go back to by layer, we can just type by layer there, and then we can go here and we can change the opacity back there. Now, the last thing that we might want to change the transparency of is going to be a hatch. So let's go and look at our hatches. So let's say I wanted to hatch these 3 objects, and I click that, and now I have my hatch menu that comes up here. Let's just go ahead and change that to solid for now. So again, you can change your hatch transparency here. That again will now not be affected by the actual layer transparency that you're using. So if we use 0 there, you see how all 3 of these are changing at the same time. So if we don't want to do that, we can go into our options and we can click separate hatches, and then you'll see we can change each one of these individually, and we can change them like that. Again, if you wanted to change these with your properties menu, you can do the same thing. So we go into our properties, and you'll see that the transparency option is also there if you don't want to do it in the actual hatch menu. So that's a basic control over hatch transparency. Something to keep in mind is that transparency is different than screening. So if you ever see an option for screening, that is not going to be a transparency. That's still going to be an opaque object that will print as something that's actually solid, even though it will take some of the look of the color out of it. It will still print as a solid object. So transparency is the way to go here at ideally the layer level, but you can also do it at the sub object layer.